everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Fabulously Fun Trips. I'm your host, Greta Smith, owner of Savvy Travel Design, where I plan fabulously fun trips for my clients to share with their favorite people. Here on the show, I typically introduce you to my representatives from some of my favorite travel companies so you can learn a little bit more about what's special about each of them. Tonight is a little bit different because I do not have a guest with me. I am flying solo. And one of the most frequent questions that I get asked in my business is, in the age of Expedia, why do people use a travel agent? What's the benefit? How is the process different? So I thought tonight that I would give you a little walkthrough of my process for working with a client from the moment that I get that first phone call or the first email all the way up to getting them home from their trip and plan it, and then of course moving on to plan the next one. So that is my topic for this evening: 5 steps to help every client plan the perfect trip. So the first part of the client experience for me when I work with someone new is what we in the industry would refer to as qualifying the guest, which basically means find out as much information as we can about what this trip looks like in their head so that we can make it happen in real life. What that means is that I sort of turn into an investigative reporter. I need to know who, what, when, where, why, how. Who's going with you? When do you want to go? Where do you want to go? Or if you don't know exactly where you want to go, what type of place do you want to go? Do you want someplace warm? Do you want the beach? Do you want a ski trip? So the where or the atmosphere that you're looking for. Obviously, when dates are super duper important. It's going to be very different planning a trip in September versus planning a trip for, let's say, June. And the why. So if you're celebrating something special, is it a honeymoon? Is it an anniversary trip? Is it something to celebrate your daughter's 18th birthday? Are we celebrating your son graduating from college? Those are all really important things to know. And of course, the how. Are you wanting to fly somewhere? Would you like to go somewhere that you can drive to? Would you like to do a train trip through Europe? Would you like to do a cruise? Are you looking for maybe a river cruise or something more of a small ship experience? All of those things are super important. Okay, so those are my beginning questions. Once we get down into it, then there's going to be more questions. So if it's the first conversation, I'm definitely going to start off with that who, what, when, where, why. But I always tell people, don't be surprised if I come back with some additional questions, because once I know the who, what, when, where, why, how, I need to know, okay, you want to go to a resort in the Caribbean. Do you want to go someplace that's all inclusive, or would you prefer something that's more of a European plan? Do you want breakfast to be included, or are you not worried about meals being included at all? Would you like to stay someplace that's adult only, or are you more comfortable in a family resort, or are you taking children and you need a family resort? All of those types of details. If you're looking for a cruise to Alaska, is Glacier National Park really important? Because that's going to tell me there's a few cruise lines that have lots and lots of permits to get into Glacier National Park. There's other cruise lines that don't really get permits to get in there. So if that's something that's on your list, I need to know that, because I need to make sure that I put you on a ship that's going to get you there. So all of those types of questions. For folks that aren't really specific, or they haven't really decided, they just sort of have a vague idea, it's helpful for me to know what's been your favorite vacation. What did you like about your last vacation? What didn't you like about your last vacation? Sometimes negatives are as important or even more important than positives, because that tells me if something went wrong, that tells me to look for that and make sure it doesn't happen again. So, favorite resorts, if you have, a favorite hotel chain, that's really useful information. I also need to know, do you collect points with a certain airline? If you always fly American, then I need to know that, so I don't try to give you, a package that includes Southwest, because you might not want that. All of that information is super duper important, and that all comes under the qualifying the guest step. So once I've got lots and lots of information on what my guest is looking for, then I can get into research. And usually by the time I'm starting this, I have a general idea of what I'm looking for. So if I know, it's a honeymoon couple with a certain budget, that was the other question I forgot to say. And this is nobody's favorite question. But during the qualifying phase, I will always ask about a budget, because affordable means different things to different people. If you are a 20-year-old honeymoon couple who's just getting started out, affordable is going to be a very different number from, the CEO who is taking his family on their, on a week's vacation. His version of affordable is going to be very different. So I need to have a number, even if it's a range. And I often get that, well, as long as it's not too much, or as long as it's affordable. So at that point, I usually try to throw out a number, because at least if I can say, okay, so $10,000, and somebody says, oh no, I was thinking more like 3, then that at least gives me the range that they're looking for, that they maybe felt weird saying, or I don't know, sometimes people feel a little weird about it. And that was one thing I wish people knew, is that that's absolutely necessary information for us. And don't ever feel weird about your number. It's just your number. It's whatever it is. So once I have all of that information, I can get into research. And usually, like I said, I usually have a pretty good idea of which direction I'm headed. I have a couple of suppliers, a couple of vendors that I typically use for initial quoting, just because I know they carry a pretty wide selection of, resorts, hotels, experiences, even airlines. Some vendors work with specifically one airline. Some vendors work with several airlines. So the ones that have the most variety are the ones that I'm going to go for initial quotes, because I want to be able to hit all of the options that are going to work well for you and I'm looking to present you maybe 3 or 4. Okay. There may be, honestly, that's what you want anyway. You want the 3 or 4 best that are going to work the best for you. You don't need number 6 down the list, because you want to be there anyway. You want to be at number 1, 2, or 3. So I'm not going to give you number 6, because that's not the best fit for you. I'm going to give you number 1, 2, and 3, because usually within 1, 2, and 3, we can check off all of the needed boxes, and we can check off a variety of, well, this one has this and this one has that, and this one doesn't have this, but it does have this. We can usually hit all those things. So I'm looking for 3, maybe 4 options to be able to give you, which brings me to my next little slide here, because the next thing I'm going to do is present you with choices. Like I said, typically 3 or 4 options, and I'll usually put them into an itinerary so you can see exactly what the flight schedules are going to be. It'll give you the links to the websites for the resorts so you can check them out and see all of their pictures. I'll usually include some pictures of my own so that you can see, because everybody's putting the best stuff on their website. So I want to make sure that, if I have some pictures that I can send you as well, that I'm including those so you can see sort of from somebody's personal camera what it actually looks like. Those choices, and I almost always will say, once you've made a selection, let me go back and run it through a few more vendors, because once I know which thing you like, then I can say, okay, if I'm looking specifically for that, I know that XYZ ABC also has that option. So I'm going to go run it and with them and make sure that we've got the best price, but also the best inclusions, because sometimes the lowest price is not the best value for you. Sometimes, especially for, like, let's say we're doing a honeymoon, one vendor might be running a special on honeymoons and romantic vacations where they're offering, dinner on the beach and champagne breakfast and a spa package for 2 or something like that, where, this vendor is doing that, but this vendor isn't. And yeah, vendor A might be $200 more, but that's like $500 or $600 worth of stuff that they're throwing in. It's a better value for you. And so that's what I'm evaluating for as well, making sure that not only is it the best price, but also that it's the best value. I'm getting you the most for your money. So that's all going to go into it once you've sort of made a selection and decided what you like and what feels comfortable to you. And that's opportunities to ask questions. If you don't like the flight schedules, we can tweak those. If there's, if it comes back and you look at, I've sent you 3 all-inclusive resorts and you go, well, I like this about this one and this one about this one and this about this one. But I don't really feel like, I don't know if any of them's the perfect fit. I can always go back and take another look. That's not a big deal. And sometimes it takes that sort of looking over things to go, oh, I really wish it had this. And this might not have come up before, but now that it's kind of come to your head, it's like, oh, okay, I can go look for that for you. So it's not a big deal. There's plenty of tweaking. We can go back and forth. Not a big deal at all. Once we have really got that nailed down and know exactly what you like, my next step is to confirm arrangements and book. Typically, I'm going to be looking to hold your reservations with the vendor, which basically just means at that point, I'm going to need full names and birth dates. I need the names as they appear on passports. If you're traveling internationally, if you're traveling domestically, then the name that's on your driver's license is fine. And they might be the same, they might be different. Some people are, I'm Greta Louise on my passport and I'm Greta L on my driver's license. So, and there's a lot of people that have that. So just as long as I have the correct name for the type of trip that you're taking, and you can never go wrong with giving me your passport name. Okay, so full names, birth dates, and that will give me enough information that they'll let me hold the reservation. What that does, at this point, I can price things. Up till now, I can price things. But especially if it includes airfare, that's entirely variable. So I can give you a price on something at 2 o'clock this afternoon. But if I go back and look at it again at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, it might be $200 more. It might be $100 less. And I am sure that their computers think that there is rhyme or reason to this, but I'm not convinced. I think it looks random sometimes to me. The only pattern that I have found is that prices tend to go up on Friday afternoon and they come down on Monday afternoon. And the only logic I can find in that is that people are home during the weekend doing their own research and their own booking. And so in order to take advantage of that, the airlines bump up their rates. That's the only thing I can figure out. And it seems to hold pretty true pretty consistently. So anyhow, those names and birth dates are super important because that lets me go in and hold the reservation. And so what that does, it puts basically, it sets it aside and puts it on a shelf for you for 24 hours usually. Sometimes it's only till the end of business. So just, different vendors do different ways. But it lets me confirm the pricing. And so between the time that I send it to you and the time that you send me your payment information for the deposit, as long as you get it into me within that window of the reservation, I know that the price isn't going to change on you. Okay. Deposits, usually you can hold a reservation you can confirm a reservation with a deposit. If you're booking close in, sometimes that's not an option because, of course, final payments need to be made within a certain number of days from the time that you're traveling. So if you're booking within that time, then it needs to be a full payment when you make the reservation. And again, depending on the vendor, and also if it's just a hotel reservation, sometimes it's really just a deposit that's needed until you arrive, or sometimes it's not even a deposit. It just depends on the vendor in that situation. But typically, if we're talking about a package, a resort stay, flights, rental car, then it's going to take a deposit to hold on to it. And then from there, there's going to be a final payment date where it'll be due. Okay, so that is step 4. And so then we move on to step 5, which I will be honest with you, most people think step 4 is where I'm finished. Okay, well, she booked it for me. She sent me the confirmation. I guess we're done. That's probably the least of what I do, especially for folks, if you're a first-time traveler or your first time on the type of travel that you're doing, then that's really definitely like the least of what I do is the booking of what you're actually going to do. Servicing the booking includes everything that's happening before, during, and after you travel. So this includes things like my information emails. And for anyone who has done a cruise or a resort stay with me knows that there's a series of, I think it's 5 or 6 emails now, that gives you all the information that you need about the type of travel that you're doing. So if we're talking about cruises, we're talking about gratuities, which actually typically you already have that number because it's included when I send you a quote. I want to make sure that you know what that gratuity cost is going to be. And if it's separate or if it's included in the cost of your cruise. But with cruises, we're going to talk about gratuities. We're going to talk about formal nights on your cruise. We're going to talk about making sure that you don't put your passport in the luggage that you send in with porters, things like that. And it's going to be chunked out. So I'm not going to send you a 10-page email because I know, you're not going to read that. I wouldn't read that. So I send you chunks. I send you what you need to know when you need to know it. So you have it and you're ready to go. And when you need the next thing is showing up in your email box. And of course, if you have a question about something, you can always reach out to me and ask. But I'm making sure that you have the information that you need when you need it. And the same with resorts, making sure that if it's an all-inclusive resort and it's got 8 restaurants, you need to know that these 2 restaurants, have a dress code. You have to wear pants and, either, a dress or a pantsuit, something like that. Things of that nature so that, you kind of know what's going on there. Making sure that you have your travel documents, making sure that you know where to look in your travel documents for your instructions to meet your transfers, because typically when I do a package, include the airport transfers, basically like your transportation to from the airport to the resort, from the resort to the airport. But when you get off the plane in, say, Cancun, you're going to meet lots and lots of people who would like to offer you a ride to your resort at varying costs. So it's important that you know where you're meeting your transfers, what they're going to be wearing, who they are, what the company is, so that you can bypass all of that nonsense and go to the thing that you already have set up. So we want to make sure that you have all of those instructions. And then the week before you leave for your vacation, wherever your vacation might be, I'm sending a Bon Voyage email, and that's got another copy of your travel documents, just in case you misplaced them, forgot to print them out, can't find the email I sent you with the originals. No big deal. You have a copy. It's ready to go. The weather report, because we all know that, the minute you plan for sun, it's going to rain one day. Would be good to know when that day is going to be. So you get the weather report, you get any last minute instructions, any reminders about things like, if you made a copy of your passports, that's a great idea, but make sure you check the copier. So, you haven't left a passport sitting on the copier or something like that. Just making sure that you have everything that you need. So that's all there. And of course, you get my cell phone number. So if something does go wrong while you are traveling, you have one number. You do not have looking through the paper going, well, this is the number for the hotel, and this is the number for the airline, and this is the number for the transfer, and I'm not sure who to call to get one number. Me. Call me. Let me know what's going on. I will fix it. Okay. So, and for a lot of folks, that convenience of, okay, I know I call this number and talk to this person and she's going to handle it, is that weight off the shoulders. And that's, if your luggage gets lost, if the resort somehow gives you the wrong kind of room, if your flight, if you get delayed and you missed your flight and now you're not going to make your connection, all of those things are a call to me. Okay, so that's everything before, everything during, and even after you get home. I'm, checking in, you get an email, you get a card that, thanks for traveling, but also, how did things go? Did you love this? Did you love this? Was this really exciting for you? Was this as great as you thought it was going to be? And also the other side of it, what wasn't as great as you thought it was going to be? Because next time we plan something, I want to make sure that we get that, dot that I and cross that T as well. If it didn't go well on the last trip, let's make sure it doesn't happen again on the next trip. All of those things are really super duper important. And that all just comes down to sort of making a relationship. I think it's really important with my clients that, I don't want it to be a one and done. I don't want it to be just, oh, I booked you your cruise, have a great life, or, booked your cruise, booked your honeymoon, have a great life. I want to know, like, how did this go? What can we do to make it better next time? And, when would you like next time to be? Because I know all this about you now. I can make this even easier for you next time. And I think that's really important too. And I think, like I said at the beginning, in the age of Expedia, where, you just go on and, with an online travel agency like that, where it's, your book it, who's he, what's it, sumo, I don't know. Everything looks great because in the business of selling, not serving necessarily. It's just a different purpose to the business model that they're using. So everything's going to look beautiful. Everything's going to look fantastic. You're going to look at the pictures on their page for this hotel, and it's going to look just as fabulous as the pictures. Their Hilton pictures are going to look just as great as their Ritz-Carlton pictures. So it can sometimes be tricky to really analyze what's there and get into the meat and potatoes of the thing that you're looking at. And I think that's where folks like me come in, where we have that firsthand knowledge and we know, and and we can always, we've got a network. We've got 1,000 travel agents that at any given time I can reach out and say, my experience with this hotel wasn't great, but my client really feels like she likes it. Can you tell me what your experience was? Maybe I just hit them on a bad week or whatever, and get some feedback from some other professionals who really know how to evaluate things as well. So I think that's super important. So anyway, that is the 5 steps that I take to get my clients their perfect trip and make sure that the reality of the vacation that they take matches the picture that they have in their heads. So, which is, of course, my job. So I'm looking to see if I have any questions in the comments. Let me just roll through here real quick and make sure. I don't see anything on that one. And I don't see anything on this one. So, okay. Well then, folks, thank you so much for joining me this evening. This has been Fabulously Fun Trips. Again, I am Greta Smith with Savvy Travel Design, wishing you love, light, and vacation daydreams. Ciao.